Millions of people in post-Soviet countries love France. But every time we rewatch the show, we are heartbroken at the exact same moment.
Minsk?
Minsk, it's in Russia.
If you are an American or Vladimir Putin, you don't see a problem here. But we know that Minsk is not in Russia. Minsk is the capital of Belarus. It's like if a character in a Russian show said, "I'm going to Toronto, USA." You know what I mean. So, Minsk is not in Russia. I mean, there is a Minsk in Russia, but it's a small dying village. And it doesn't look like a place to achieve.
Today's particle accelerators are nowhere near powerful enough to simulate these conditions.
Apparently that was not enough, and the creators of France decided to make up a bunch of stuff about post-Soviet countries. When Hank Azaria invites Paul Rudd to Minsk, he promises that they'll party Vladnik style.
We'll party up Vladnik style.
The problem is that we don't know what Vladnik is. Really often we don't know what style is either, but that can be solved. It feels like the writers just made up a Russian-sounding word for cheap laughs. And not once.
There's an old Russian expression. It goes, "Что я здесь вижу? Ой."
No, there isn't. Where do you get this shit? We never say that. And why are people laughing after oi? It's not a punchline. Do American audiences just like funny noises? Do you know that there are jokes in this show? Do you know that great writers worked on France? I mean, they're shit people who don't respect other cultures, but they're great writers. You can say that they just couldn't find a person to help them, but this guy
We should go.
speaks decent Russian. It just means that they didn't have time or desire to talk to an actual post-Soviet person to do their job better. Of course, it's not just about France. American filmmakers never care about the rest of the world. Europe to them is just a place to shoot a great car chase for the second act. Because if somebody gets hurt, they have healthcare in Europe. After a chase, the characters usually return to the United States, which is filmed in Canada. And if Western Europe gets to show the world its best parts, like the Colosseum or the Eiffel Tower, the rest of the world is just a synonym for ugly and poor. Like Vilnius, Lithuania. Americans don't know what it is, so you can show a fourth world marketplace. But if you visit the real Vilnius, it turns out to be a great city with good food and, again, healthcare. And as you can see, Lithuania actually has color grading. It gets even worse when the Americans try to portray the Slavic culture. Thank God, most of the time you just revert the letter R and that's all you know. Sometimes Hollywood tries harder and even shows the map of Russia. I mean, they try. The word Moscow is spelled correctly. But the other two cities, we have 3 cities, are just a mess. Obviously a map from a history book was used here, because St. Petersburg is called here by its pre-Soviet name Petrograd. And the third and the last city in Russia is Novosibirsk. Here it's spelled Novosibirsk, which is something from IKEA, I guess. The word tucha means cloud, and vsnamznon means vsnamznon. It's the universal word for a designer who passed out on a keyboard. And still, it's not the worst case. The creators of the show A Young Doctor's Notebook replaced all the Latin letters with Cyrillic ones. And that looks offensive to any culture. Another favorite topic of Russian-speaking cinephiles is the offensive stereotypes that filmmakers use when portraying Russian characters. The most famous example is the Russian astronaut in Armageddon.
Hello, this is a Russian space station, can you hear me?
He's drunk, he's using outdated tools, and I wanted to talk about how outrageous that is. But then I saw how real Russian astronauts look like nowadays, and I gotta say thank you to Michael Bay for being so tasteful and nice to us. John Wick was shot by Chad Stahelski, the former stuntman. John Wick is from Belarus. And this whole franchise is how people who get hit in the head too often imagine the Slavic culture. Of course we have ballet, vodka, criminals and gypsy orchestras, but not at the same time. I don't know how you could get all that in one story. Maybe this is how you imagine a Vladnik-style party. Anyway, every time I want to be offended, I remember that Slavic people in this universe are still nicer than Germans who just dance in a Berlin nightclub while people are killing each other. By the way, if you don't mind, can Russia have John Wick and can we give Hank Azaria to Belarus? But the biggest problem is names. Where do you get those names? Russian characters in Hollywood movies are always named like Igor Stoyanovich or Sergeant Babich. Or... Again, if you watch it from America, you don't see a problem here. But these names always sound Croatian or Serbian. You always care so much about respecting Asian culture or African culture. But you never care about offending post-Soviet or Balkan people. Because Serbs already love you so much. The second Avengers movie tells us about Sokovia, a fictional country in the Marvel universe. We don't know much about this country, but we can guess that it's somewhere in southern or eastern Europe, the population is Slavic, and at some point the country was bombed by the Americans. I would have loved to see the premiere of this movie in Belgrade, Serbia. I want to see people looking at each other and wondering what country they're talking about that was bombed by NATO. My favorite example of the Balkanization of Russian names is the Bad Boys Part 2. One of the villains, the Russian arms dealer, of course, is named Joseph Kosinkovich. I don't know if I should repeat this, but not a Russian name. Not a Ukrainian name, not a Belarusian name even. What baffles me is that his partner is played by Oleg Taktarov, the real Russian actor and MMA fighter. He is Russian and he has definitely seen and talked to other Russians. So he knows that a Russian character cannot be named Joseph Kosinkovich. But he says nothing. Either the actors don't have a right to discuss the script, or Oleg Taktarov just decided not to do it, because Russians do not protest. There is an ongoing war between screenwriters and the studios over the use of AI in writing new movies. And at this point we are rooting for the AI because ChatGPT is obviously so much better at inventing new character names than real screenwriters. The pinnacle of bad naming is the villain in the last James Bond movie. He is named Lucifer Safin. It's not obvious, but the word Lucifer in Russian means Lucifer. So the screenwriters are basically implying that the Russian family had a son and they decided to name him Lucifer. Why wouldn't he want to destroy the world? I guess Rami Malek lost a lot of fans in Russia because in the span of 3 years he played Lucifer and a gay man. I think the problem is that we are not well represented in the mainstream entertainment. If Hollywood needs a good Russian character, they hire a Scandinavian actor. If they need a bad Russian, they hire a Russian. And by Russian, I mean Yuri Kolokolnikov. Our biggest representation in the blockbuster world is Natasha Romanoff from The Avengers, played by Scarlett Johansson. Her father, of course, is from Denmark. Natasha Romanoff has no superpowers, she just went to a special spy school. She didn't get her powers from aliens, because aliens only land in the United States. And it's not science, because all the scientists are in Minsk, which is Belarus. What I'm trying to say is that your portrayal of the post-Soviet countries always comes across as dismissive.
Why on earth do you live in Coney Island?
It's the Ukrainian food scene, or perhaps it's the endless subway commute.
Dear Mindy, if you really tried the Ukrainian food, you would never work for this bitch again. And you would never leave your neighborhood for fear of losing access to quality borscht. That's a problem because people all over the world form their opinions on other countries based on the American pop culture. So when you show the Eastern Europe as a hellhole without any color correction, that's what people think. And they don't care that Russia and Ukraine are different countries. And Russia and Belarus are different countries. I mean, they both have crazy dictators, but they're different countries. People there would really like to have more attention to their problems. It's really hard to kill and torture them when the world is watching. There are over 1 million Russian speakers in California. And judging by the second act of Anora, there are like 11 million Russian speakers in New York.
Yep, we said.
I am sure you can hire a consultant for a small fee. Only if you want to. You can hire me. Or you just can hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I will tell people if something's wrong.